What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? I'm Scott and welcome back to FudgeMuppet. Today we have the latest installment in our Fallout 4 build series, and today we have the Cryotrooper. The Cryotrooper hits his foes like a blizzard, hailing cryo grenades down on them while cooling them off with his cryolator. The ice cold finish on his X01 power armor drives fear down deep in the hearts of his enemies like icicles. He uses explosive and cryo damage to decimate everything around him, leaving frost-covered death in his wake. The Cryotrooper combines excellent physical prowess with the mind of a keen intellectual to bring the Commonwealth under his control, and anyone who opposes him will be left frozen on the spot, contemplating their mistakes until they thaw out or die in the process. The twisted events of Vault 111 may have killed his wife, but the Cryotrooper took the cold and turned it into his greatest weapon. This build capitalizes on mayhem, getting in and amongst the battle, dishing out high damage from the safety of his sturdy high-tech power armor. Don't forget that timestamps can be found in the description for all your video navigation needs, but first up, let's get straight into the Cryotrooper's backstory. The Cryotrooper was born into a wealthy family in the suburbs of Boston. He had a very close relationship with his father, who was a former Olympic athlete. They would frequently travel north to Quebec on skiing trips. From a young age, the Cryotrooper learned to snowboard and developed a passion for it. He dreamed of one day being good enough to win gold like his father had never been able to. They would go on these skiing trips with his dad's close friend and his daughter Nora. The Cryotrooper and Nora were childhood friends from school and hit it off, both wanting to be the best snowboarders they could be. By the time high school came to an end, the Cryotrooper's dedication and high-class education granted him an offer to study engineering at CIT, but after much consideration, he declined the offer, instead choosing to focus all of his ambition on furthering his career as a professional snowboarder. Unlike him, Nora chose to play it safe, allowing her board to gather dust in the garage as she went on to study a degree for law. As a result, they put their relationship on hold indefinitely, and the Cryotrooper moved to Quebec. The Cryotrooper's big break came a few years later. He had the opportunity to participate in a famous snowboarding competition for a significant cash prize. Success here would certainly put his name on the map. He trained tirelessly, getting his body and mind into peak condition leading up to the day. The event was a time trial down one of the most dangerous mountain tracks in Canada, and the leading time was very impressive. The Cryotrooper stood at the top of the mountain and peered down the endless white expanses of snow, taking a deep breath in the process. He could just about see the hordes of onlookers and spectators gathered around the finish line. The buzzer sounded and his time began. The Cryotrooper pushed off, gaining immense speed in seconds. Pine trees whirred past him as he weaved through obstacles with masterful precision. When he was snowboarding, his usually overworked mind would go into a state of equilibrium, his only thoughts dedicated to the present moment. Despite this, he couldn't suppress the reality that he was ahead of the current best time. Adrenaline surged through him and he pushed on, narrowing his frame to increase his speed. He saw a rise in the earth ahead. Many would have played it safe and slowed down or even carved around the outside, but the Cryotrooper was determined to win. He hit the slope at a breakneck speed and found himself suddenly airborne. The drop was bigger than he had anticipated, and he wasn't prepared to brace for such a heavy landing. As his board impacted the snow-covered ground, he heard a snap and felt pain shoot up his body like 100 knives. As his vision faded, he thought he could distinguish the collective gasp of the thousands of onlookers. The next thing he knew, he was lying in a hospital bed with a broken tibia. He didn't need to be told that his career was over. In an attempt to escape from the disappointment, the Cryotrooper enlisted in the military. Once his injury had healed, he was stationed in Canada to assist in the protection of the US-Alaskan oil pipelines. During his time in the service, he was heavily involved with the development of security systems designed to guard the pipeline perimeters, despite not being recruited as an engineer in the first place. His many years training to be a professional snowboarder meant he was perfectly prepared for the harsh climate. While his peers froze and complained through chattering teeth, the Cryotrooper laughed and made jokes at their expense. When he returned from his service, he contacted Nora, who had acquired her law degree and had been working as an attorney. They rekindled their old love and ended up settling down in the serene suburb of Sanctuary Hills to raise a child. That was, of course, until October 23rd, 2077, when the bombs fell on Boston and the world was struck by total atomic annihilation. The Cryotrooper would argue that the Vault 111 cryopods weren't even that cold, and he was just tired when they put him in there, but either way, he is very disoriented and angry when he awakes from stasis. He will be devastated by the loss of his lifelong best friend and wife, and his infant child, and will therefore make it his primary objective to get revenge and find his son. Before leaving the vault, however, he will notice the peculiar prototype for the cryolator in the overseer's office. He makes a mental note of its existence and aims to return for it in the future when he has the proper tools to extract it from its case and when more urgent issues are resolved. world. Despite not getting a university education, the Cryotrooper is an intelligent individual who values fact and practicality over emotion. Even though the Commonwealth is destroyed, he has faith that what remains of humanity can restore it. He will empathize for the Railroad's cause, but will not be convinced that their motivations are correct for the greater good of the post-war world. He sees the Brotherhood of Steel as the other extreme, exercising severe bigotry and hoarding technology that could be better utilized for the rebuilding of civilization. That leaves the Institute. When he discovers them, he is willing to look past their slightly more sinister side of their operations, as he believes they are the best hope for the future. Now that we know a little bit about the Cryotrooper, let's take a look at his stats. When you start the game, his base stats will be 5 strength, 4 perception, 7 endurance, 1 charisma, 9 intelligence, 1 agility, and 1 luck. The bonus point available from the special book in Sean's room will go into luck in order to take Scrounger as early as possible. Scrounger will be incredibly useful for making enough money to afford expensive cryo cells for the cryolator. As you can tell, the Cryotrooper is a bit of an all-rounder. He's proficient in a variety of areas, and this is particularly due to his attitude. In his life, his drive and ambition have allowed him to be a professional level athlete as well as a man of intellect. When opportunities present themselves, he makes a habit of capitalizing on them and succeeding. 5 points of base strength is a perfect example of this. He isn't a hulkish brute, but embraces the wasteland with the same poise and power as snowboarding. He tackles obstacles head-on, and 5 points of strength resembles this. When he descends down steep mountain slopes, awareness is essential, and 4 points of perception is a respectable amount to cover all his needs in the wasteland. One of his more notable stats is endurance. Whether it be juggling, education, or sport, or simply his ability to withstand the cold, the Cryotrooper is a testament to durability. He knows what it's like to train at a pro level, and when his battle-hardened peers froze their nuts off in the annexation of Canada, the Cryotrooper stood resilient and stoic. 7 points dropped into this stat justifies that. And his most important stat, of course, is intelligence. He may have passed up the opportunity to study with the greatest minds of Boston and get a degree in engineering in order to follow his passions, but with or without that fancy piece of paper, the Cryotrooper is the kind of guy who can bring a lot to the table when rebuilding civilization. He showed the engineers and technicians how to do their jobs in the military, and he applies the same level of drive and discipline in academic endeavors as he does in physical. For this reason, the Cryotrooper has a whopping 9 points of intelligence. But with the start game stats in mind, let's shift focus to see how they can be applied to the Cryotrooper's playstyle in the form of his essential perks. First up from the strength stat line, we have armor, and as we know, the Cryotrooper was involved in many great tasks while in the military, not just serving as a soldier on the battlefield. One thing he picked up during his service was how to properly maintain his armor. With this perk maxed out, the Cryotrooper will have access to every rank of armor modifications. Secondly, from strength, there's Heavy Gunner. The Cryotrooper isn't big on half-assed efforts, and he carried the biggest, most powerful weapons into combat. After laying eyes on the glorious Cryolator, he wasn't about to change that. With the Heavy Gunner perk fully optimized, heavy guns will do double their original damage, will have improved hipfire accuracy, and will have a chance to stagger opponents in battle. From the perception stat line, you will want to drop 3 perk points into Locksmith. After setting his eyes on the inconveniently caged and out-of-reach Cryolator, the Cryotrooper made it his group to liberate it and use it for himself. And we all know what happens when the Cryotrooper sets his mind to something. With 3 ranks of Locksmith, you'll be able to pick all the difficulties of a lock, and also from perception we have the Demolitions Expert perk. This is yet another example of the benefits of military service. Not only will the Cryotrooper bring icy death to his opponents, but he will also be able to blow them into 1,000 pieces. With the Demolition Expert perk fully undertaken, explosives will do double damage. Also, grenades will gain a throwing arc, and you'll be able to craft explosives at chem stations. Explosions will have a large radius, and mines and grenades shot while in bats will explode for twice as much damage. As for endurance, we suggest taking one perk from this line, and that is chem resistant. The Cryotrooper has an impressive tolerance threshold for just about anything, and with this perk he'll have total immunity to chem addiction, allowing him to enhance his abilities in and out of combat without a worry. The majority of the Cryotrooper's vital perks come from the intelligence skill line. The first of these is Medic. When he isn't busy being treated in the hospital for reckless snowboarding injuries, the Cryotrooper is expanding his own knowledge of the sciences. 3 levels of Medic means Stimpaks will restore 80% of lost health, and Radaway will remove 80% of acquired radiation. Next up we have Hacker, another bonus of an educational stint in the military. With 3 ranks of this perk, the Cryotrooper will be able to bypass all difficulties of security encryption when accessing terminals. Scrapper is next, and as a man with his eyes on 1 or more exotic weapons in the Commonwealth, having the ability to salvage valuables from the endless post-war scrap is a must. With this perk maxed, you'll be able to salvage uncommon and rare components when scrapping weapons and armor, and thanks to the final rank, you will also reap more rewards than usual. This almost engineer has a clear reverence for the feats of technological innovation, but despite the deteriorated state of the landscape, fascinating weapons can be found by the bucket load in Boston. With the science perk, he will be able to apply all high-tech mods to his energy-based weapons. And next we have Chemist. With all 4 ranks of this taken, any chems the Cryotrooper consumes will be a massive 200% longer. When used in tandem with chem resistance, consistent, this means you'll be amped up on jet and buff out, killing in slow motion for as long as you please. After this, there is the Robotics Expert perk, showing the engineers in the US Army how to build security systems evidently isn't where his technological know-how ends. With this perk, the Cryotrooper will be able to hack robots. This means powering them on or off, initiating self-destructive sequences, inciting them to attack, or giving them specific commands. The robots of the Commonwealth will bow down to the Cryotrooper. And finally, from intelligence, we have Nuclear Physicist. The Cryotrooper is no fool, and when there are huge chunks of steel waiting to be commandeered all over Boston, why bother getting into battle on bare foot? With his perk, optimized fusion cores will last 50% longer, and when you are done with them, they can be ejected from power armor like devastating grenades. It's important to note that this perk also boosts radiation weapon damage by 100%, but the Cryolator and minigun will be unaffected by this anyway. Last but not least, we have the Luck stat. From this stat, Fortune Finder and Scrounger are crucial to the Cryotrooper. As mentioned earlier, these perks will ensure that you find plenty of valuable loot in your travels in order to fund your insatiable need for cryo cells. Fortune Finder increases the amount of caps found in containers significantly and gives the chance for downed enemies to explode in a shower of caps, while Scrounger increases the amount of ammo found in containers and gives the possibility of restoring some ammo when firing the last round in a magazine. Not including gear, but including all the bobbleheads, the Cryotrooper's endgame special stats will be 6 strength, 5 perception, 8 endurance, 2 charisma, 10 intelligence, 2 agility, and 3 luck. The Cryotrooper's aesthetic and playstyle contribute massively to the entertainment value of this epic build. As for its attire, early on you'll want to get your hands on the best power armor possible, coloring each piece with winterized paint for obvious reasons. The main goal is to get the X01 power armor suit with the Institute paint job. Not only does this paint suit the Cryotrooper's allegiances, but also provides an epic icy blue coloring to the suit, complete with piercing blue eyes. Under this, you have the freedom to wear just about whatever you want, but most of the time you'll be wearing the power armor. As for weapons, this is where things get really fun. The fully upgraded Cryolator is the primary weapon of choice and can be accessed from Vault 111 as soon as your lockpicking skill is high enough. The perfect backup is the minigun. Ideally, finding one of these with an explosive legendary effect and good modifications would be nice, as the Cryotrooper is not invested in the gun nut perk. But this isn't too urgent and will act mainly as a secondary weapon choice. Along with these, the Cryotrooper will carry cryo grenades and cryo mines crafted himself at chem stations or looted with the Scrounger perk. Obviously, a great addition to this setup would be to use as many chems as you can get your hands on. The Cryotrooper knows what makes robots tick and enjoys their reliable companionship as a result. The perfect companion choice would be Codsworth, modified to suit the snowy theme. Just about any robot crafted with the Automatron DLC will work too, but Codsworth brings some personality that those robots can't hope to match. Settlements are completely up to you. The Cryotrooper focuses on the greater good by siding with the Institute, but this doesn't mean he can't think globally and act locally if you want to establish settlements with the Minutemen. You may also be tempted to build a base of operations to store up any backup power armor sets or heavy weapons. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop the video a like if you haven't already. Your support drives these builds and we really appreciate it. But there you have it, guys. That was the latest FudgeMuppet Fallout 4 build, the Cryotrooper, the ultimate cryo damage build. Don't forget the timestamps to help you navigate the video can be found in the description, along with links to our social media accounts. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'm Scott, and I look forward to nerding out with you all again very soon.